Very good day everyone. So today we will learn on how we can use data cleaning in Power BI. So when we talk about Power BI, we are not actually referring to data visualization because Power BI also have Power Query which able to help us to do data cleaning, data transformation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to import data from Excel and then I'm going to select data cleaning via Power Query. So I'm going to use this file and I'm going to show how we can use Power BI to perform data cleaning. So many people will presume that Power BI means about visualization. Not necessary. We can actually use Power BI to perform data cleaning because sometimes our data is not clean. So we need to clean our data, then we need to load, and then eventually we can actually produce so many exciting visuals and so on. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just select all these tabs, okay, all these worksheets over here. So I click this and then I press shift and I'll click on level 9. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to press on transform data. So once I press transform data, you will notice that we will be navigated to Power Query Editor. Okay, so it is in Power Query Editor where we will do the data transformation and data cleaning. So now let us start with level 1. So in level 1, we do have a data whereby we have the company name, we have the type which is forecast actual, and we have OPEX and CAPEX. So the problem right now is the Petro Corp, RFS Energy, JFM, all these are located as the header. So what we need to do is we need to X the change type and X the promoted headers so that all these companies are promoted down, whereby instead of being a header, it will just demoted to the first row. And then if you notice, we have null. Basically in Power Query, what does null means? Null means is actually referring to a blank cell in Excel. When your data in Excel is merged or when it has a blank cell, in Power Query, it will show null. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to transform and click transpose. So transpose means it will change the layout. So just now you will notice that all the company names were actually appeared in a horizontal format. Like you have the companies, but right now all the companies right now appears in a vertical format. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill down. So right click and I will fill down. So fill down, and just like that the data will fill down. The next thing is what I want to do is the OPEX and CAPEX, and I want to put it as the first row. So I'm going to use first row as header. Either you can click it over here or you can go to home and you can just click it over here. It's the same thing. Use first row as header. So right now we will have the OPEX and CAPEX. Second thing is I'm going to do next thing is I'm going to select the OPEX and CAPEX, and then what I'm going to do is I just want to go to unpivot column. So under transform we have unpivot column, or over here we can just press right click and we can actually click unpivot column. So by pressing unpivot column, just like that it will appear in this format. So right now our data is cleaner because initially if you notice our data appears in this format, but when we do data cleaning or data transformation, now it's in a cleaner format. So the final step is we can actually name the company, name the columns, company name, and we can name this column as type. We can name this column as expenses because OPEX and CAPEX are expenses. OPEX means operating expenses, CAPEX means capital expenses. And then after that, this one is value. This particular column is value. So right now we have done for level 1. So now let us go to level 2. So level 2, whereby we look here, we do have 3 different columns. Column 1, column 2, column 3. So if you look carefully, column 1 is not necessary. So we can select this column, right click. Since it's not necessary, we can remove the column. So we can just right click and remove. And if you look carefully, the first row, second row, third row is not necessary. So we can actually remove the first 3 rows. So we can go to home, under remove row, you can click remove top row because it's located at the top and you can remove the top row. Or you can also remove blank row. Blank row means it is whatever row that has null, that means we can actually remove the blank row. So I'm going to select remove blank row, and just like that all the first 3 rows will be removed. Now I want to promote the first row as the header. So I'm going to choose use first row as header. So over here we have use first row as header, and just like that we have completed level 2. Now let's go to level 3. So level 3 we have a data whereby we have the company which has the dates, the invoice, the customer, the inventories, the quantity and unit price. So the same thing, I don't want the first row. So how to remove the first row? You can actually go to remove row, can remove the top row because it's located at the top, remove the first row, or you can also remove the blank row, and just like that the first row has been removed. Next thing is you want to promote the first row becoming the header. So you click it over here, and just like that the first row has been promoted and become the header. The next thing is, if you see here, the date issued is not in a proper format because ABC means it is actually in a text format, whereas 1, 2, 3 means it is in a whole number format. But over here our date column is not reflecting in a proper date format, so we need to click it over here and we need to choose date format. You may ask me why I need to format the date, because over here we have only date, here we have date and time, here we have date, here we have date and time. So the thing is, I need to click the ABC one to click, and I can either choose date and time or I can choose date. And just like that, we have now all in a proper date format. And we can also calculate the multiplication because 1 unit is about 7,000 ringgit. So we need to multiply with the quantity. So I select these two quantity, and then I go to add column, and then what I do is I press standard and I press multiply. So over here we have the multiplication. You can just rename this as total sales. So we are done with level 3. Now let's go to level 4. So if you look carefully in level 4, we do have a data which has organization, the financial year, revenue, cost. So what I need to do is I need to actually fill down because this ABC has been merged. So we need to fill down so that it reflects the organization name. So right click and then I fill down. So when I press fill down, and just like that, dia akan isi ke bawah. That means it will fill down. And now here we have organization here. Now we need to calculate the profit. So profit is equivalent to revenue minus cost. So first step is select the revenue. We must select what we want to minus first. So revenue minus cost. So revenue, press shift, select cost, and then what we do is we go to add column, standard, and then what we do is we press subtract. Why subtract? Because revenue minus cost. Click it over here, and over here we do have the profit. So I'm going to name this as profit. There you go. Now let us go to level 5. So when you look at level 5, what we are going to learn right now is unpivot column, because here we have the banks, accounting item, GL item. We want to unpivot the years. So we have 2018, 2019, 2020, and I scroll to the right, we have 2022. So you can select these these remaining columns, the last 5 columns, and I'm going to press unpivot column. So when I go to transform and I press unpivot, so you may ask me what is unpivot? Unpivot column means it will actually transpose the selected columns into 2 different columns. So when I press unpivot columns, just like that, it will produce into 2 different columns. And now what I can do is I can name this as year, and this is the value. So now this is what unpivot column is. It will actually transpose the selected column and forming 2 different columns, which is attribute and value. Now let us go to level 6. So if you look carefully in level 6, we do have a proper structured data, but I just want to show what Power Query can actually offer. Here we do have date, customer, products, models, USD. So if just say you want to calculate the particular month, you can just go to add column, and then over here we select, make sure we select the first column, we go to date, and then we select what? We select month, the name of month. So over here it will pop out the name of month. So just say we have a date and column, and your manager wants to know maybe the quarter, the year, the month. We can actually use Power Query to determine the period of a particular date. And then what we can do next is we can actually use group by to create a summary by months. Meaning to say, you can go to transform and click here group by, or you can go to home and you can actually click here group by. It's the same thing. So I'm going to press here group by. You will notice a box will appear, and what I'm going to do is I want to actually create a summary by showing the months. So I'm going to show here summary by months. So if they say basic means we can actually group by 1 item. Advanced means we can actually group by multiple items. So first I'll show basic. So basic means we can actually group by based on month, and over here I'll just create sum. We need to sum what? Sum the sales USD. So sales USD, and I can change the name to maybe total sales. And I'm going to press OK. So once I press OK, you can see the monthly sales from January up to December. So not only you can do summarize or summary in pivot table, you can also do a summary in Power Query via group by. But of course, if just say just now I showed you basic, so when I can click on the screw over here, so just now what we did is we did by basic. But just say we want to do advanced, we want to understand what advanced can offer. So I'm going to click here advanced, and maybe I want to group by the Apple products. So I'm going to click here and I'm going to choose Apple products, and I'm going to press OK. By pressing OK, we can actually understand how much sales made from the monthly and also from the respective Apple products like Apple Watch, iPhone, and so on. And not only that, just now we only calculate the total sales. We can also add another aggregation to count actually how many times it appeared, because maybe we want to actually know that how many times it's being sales, what is the average, or in this case count means how many times it appear. So I just want to know number of transactions, and I'm going to press OK, and just like that we can actually understand. So what we can understand is in January we have 54 transactions for Apple Watch. So this is how we can actually use group by to actually understand the data, to create a summary for the particular data. So now let us go to level 7. When I go to level 7, we do have a name list which has the employee list like the name, the ID, the email, the department, the date of birth, the salary, the annual leave, and KPI. So right now, you actually want to calculate the age of an employee. Maybe we want to know who is going to retire and so on. So in this case, we do have the date of birth. So we can actually use Power Query to calculate the age of an individual, or we can also calculate the number of service years from a particular date. So I'm going to select this date column. I go to add column and I click here the date, I click the age. So I click here age, you will show here the age, but it will show the number of days. So actually we live in a universe whereby we calculate age by number of years, not by number of days. So what you can do is you can go to transform and you can go to duration. You can actually click to total years. So over here we can understand that this is the age of respective individuals as of today's date, and of course we can change this to a whole number format so that it doesn't show any decimal. We can click it here and show whole number, or if just say you really want to show rounding, so what you can do is you can click over here, you can show here as rounding. So I'm going to click here rounding, round, and I want to show here as 0 decimal places and press OK. So from here we can get the age of individual, and just say my manager wanted to know who is going to retire next. I can click it over here and I can sort in a descending format. So when I sort in descending, we get to understand that which particular employee will actually retire eventually. So now we have the name list, and we also can calculate the age of the individual. So now let's go to the next level, which is level 8. So level 8, what we have is we do have a data. So if you look here carefully, here we have null, null, null. So the first row is not necessary. However, not all the columns appear null, because over here if you notice, we do have all the data actually appear like 1000, 2000, 3000. So I can actually go to home and remove row, but I can't click the remove blank. Why? Remove blank ensures that all the column must have the blank. Like in this case, yes, we do have null, but first 1000, 1000, 2000, 3000, 4000 appear in the last column. So in this case, it's not necessary. So what we do is we click remove row, remove top row, a box will appear, click number 1. Why number 1? Because we want to remove the first row. I press enter, and just like that you will notice the first row has been removed. Then we can use first row as header. So now you will notice that the first row has been promoted as the header. And then I'll select the last 4 columns, because I want the columns for department and I want a dedicated column for the value. So I can go to transform and click unpivot column, or you can actually right click at the column header. So right click and press unpivot column. Bear in mind, sometimes when I say right click, sometimes we tend to right click over here. Over here we are not able to press unpivot column. We need to actually select all the columns, right click at the header. When you right click at the header, that is when you can unpivot column. And just like that, we can actually clean the data. So eventually you can rename this and rename the value column. Now let's go to level 9. So if you look, level 9 is basically what I have done previously in level 1, because we do have the company name appears at the top, and this is how we need to demote it. So you can just press X over here, X over here, and just like that it will actually demote the header becoming the first row, and then go to transform, click transpose, and then use the first column, right click and use fill down. So when I press fill down, it will fill down automatically, and the first row can be promoted as the header. So when I promote the first row becoming the header, I can click it over here, first row as the header, and then I can select OPEX and CAPEX, right click, and then I can press unpivot columns. And this is how I clean the data. So done for level 9. Now let us go to level 10. So level 10 is very interesting because we do have 6 different data. One for country, one for town, one for months, one for expenses like a type of expenses, actual and budgeted, and one is the expenses type like staff cost, depreciation. So what I need to do is I need to clean the data because the January and February appears at the top. So what I need to do is I need to I need to remove the change type and promoted headers. So this is how it appears. Select the first column, right click, and then I press fill down. So when I press fill down, automatically it will fill down. And then what I'll do is I need to combine the first 2 columns. Column 1, column 2, I need to combine. Why I need to combine? Because for temporary basis, I need to combine this, and eventually later I will split it. So what I do is I will actually go to transform. I click merge column. So a box will appear, and I want a separator to have maybe a colon, a comma, anything you want, as long it's not a space or it's not a tab, because I want to split later. You can actually use space, but depending on your data, because sometimes a country can have 2 different names, sometimes a town can have 2 different names, so I don't want to use space. So you can either use semicolon, equal sign, comma, and so on. So I'm going to use equal sign, and I'm going to press OK. So the purpose is to combine first, and then eventually later we will split it. So for temporary basis, we will merge the column. Then I will transpose to change the layout so that right now the January, the February appears in a vertical list. Right click the first 2 columns, fill down, because we do have null, so automatically will fill down. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use first row as header because I don't want column 1, column 2, column 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select use first row as header, and now we have the first 3 columns. So select the first 3 columns and then right click and then unpivot other column. Just now I showed unpivot column, but unpivot other column means the other columns will be unpivoted. So I just click unpivot other columns, and just like that it will change the layout. So you can select this column over here. This is the column that I want to split. So you can actually click here, split column, by delimiter, a box will appear, equal sign, and each occurrence. That means every time when there's an equal sign, you want to split. So I'm going to press OK, and just like that, it will split the column. So here you can actually rename this as months. This will be renaming as type, maybe it's a actual or budgeted. You can actually rename this maybe as expenses. Okay, so I'm going to rename this as expenses. Here as country, here is town, and just like that. So basically we can actually use Power Query to perform so many interesting data cleaning and clean the data, transform the data, and so on. So now let us go to the next one, which is level 11. So level 11 is very interesting because we do have the codes, we do have the cost elements, we do have debit, credit, and also the closing balance. So the first step is I don't want the columns. So like column 3, column 4, columns 8, column 9, I don't really want it. So what I can do is I can actually go to home and I can actually choose column. So whatever column that I don't want, I will unselect. So column 3 I don't want, column 4 I don't want, column 8 and column 9 I don't want. So I'm going to press OK, and just like that it will remove the other columns. And then in this case, of course, the debit, credit, closing appears as the first row. So I'm going to choose use first row as header. So the first row will be promoted as the header. And in this case, I don't want the total, I don't want the sales revenue, and I don't want the word nasi lemak and so on. So I can actually filter this. I will unselect all. So I will select nasi goreng ayam, biasa, udang, lemak ayam, lemak biasa. So this is the data I want, and I'm going to press OK. And just like that, we have this data. Of course, this column is not so clean what we can do is we can go to transform and we can format it and we can trim it. By trimming it, now the data becomes cleaner. So you can put here as code and you can put here as products or maybe the type of food services. There you go. So now this is the data. So now let us go to level 12. So when you talk about level 12, it's a very interesting case because we do have products, we do have the models, we do have the months. So basically we need to clean the data. If you look here carefully, the first column is not necessary. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press here right click and I want to remove this column. So just like that, the first column has been removed. And I don't want the null. I don't want the null over here. So what I can actually do is I can actually remove blank rows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to home and I will just click remove blank rows. By clicking remove blank rows, so all the blank rows or all whatever rows that are not necessary, it will be removed. And of course I want to fill down. So I'm going to press here right click and I'll press fill down. So right now it will fill down automatically. Of course, over here we have January, February, March. I want to promote as the header. So I'll use first row as the header. And just like that, our data has been promoted. The first row has been promoted as the header. Then what I'm going to do next is I want to filter out the total and null. So I'm going to select this, unselect the null and unselect the total. And I'm going to press OK. And just like that, whatever unnecessary like null, total has been filtered out. Then I can actually select the first two columns, right click, and I can actually unpivot other columns. Meaning to say your other columns like January until December will be pivoted. So if just say you don't have to select one by one, you can select the few columns, right click and unpivot other columns. So right now you have all these columns over here. You may ask me why don't have July or maybe December data, because if you look here carefully in the previous data, previous step, we notice that July it is null, September is null and up to December is null. Meaning to say when you unpivot a data which has a null data, null column, meaning to say it will not appear. Null in basically means in Power Query, null is referring to a blank cell in the Excel file. So I'm going to just go here and I want to rename this. So this one I'll rename this as products. This one I'm going to rename it as models. Over here I'm going to rename it as months. And this is the value, but I need to format it. So I'm going to choose as whole number. And just like that, it will change accordingly. So right now let us go to level 13. So level 13 is also a same case study, like almost the same, but only tricky thing is in the same column we do have two different types of data. Like we have Americas, iPhone, Americas, iPhone, Asian Pacific, iPhone. So meaning to say we do have two different data in one column. So what we need to do is, first step is we just actually remove the other columns. Then eventually we will segregate this column. So I'm going to select this. You can actually press right click and remove, or you can actually press delete. So by pressing delete, we will remove the first column. The null rows is not necessary. So we can remove row, remove the blank rows, so that whatever null rows it will remove eventually. But if you notice in this column here, we do have two different types of data, like Asian Pacific and then products, Americas then products. What we can do is we can segregate. So whenever it has the word Jan, we want to actually segregate the region like Asian Pacific, Americas and so on. So the exciting part is whenever it has the word January, you will notice all the region will appear. So what I'm going to do is I will use conditional column. That means I go to add column. Under add column, we have conditional column. Click it over here. You will notice a box will appear. So what I'm going to choose is if just say column 4, this is column number 4. So I'm going to press here column 4 equals to Jan. You have to make sure the case and the spelling is correct. So I'm going to put here capital J A N, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put if just say is equivalent to Jan, I want column 3 to appear. So ABC 1 to 3, I'm going to select here, select a column and choose column number 3. Otherwise, I'm going to choose here null. And I'm going to press OK. And just like that, you have this data. So I'm going to press here right click and I'll press fill down. So it will fill down and you can just press here right click and then you can actually move to the beginning. So it will appear in the beginning. Or what you can do is if you want to fill down together, maybe what I'll do is I'll just remove this and I press delete. So right now what happened is it will have here null. So we can do it together, custom and column, right click and fill down. There you go. So right now what I can do is I can actually use the first row as header to promote it. So I'm going to go to home and use first row as header. You can try here, or you can go to transform and choose over here. So I'm going to use first row as header. Automatically it will promote the first row becoming the header. And then if just say you want to actually remove out, or you want to filter out, because here we have total, we have Americas, you can click it over here. You can unselect all, select the necessary items like iPhone, MacBook, others and Apple Watch, and press OK. And just like that, our data has become cleaner. We can select the first three columns, right click and unpivot other columns, and this is how our data will appear. So you can actually rename this as region. This one here you can rename as sales method. Here you can rename as products. Here you can rename as months. And over here you can actually rename it, or you can actually format it into a whole number. Just like that, it has changed accordingly. So now let us go to level 14. So when you talk about level 14, right now the data right here is a bit tricky, because we do have all the headers appear in a rows, because all the headers appear as in a rows format. Everything is in column 1. Right now what I want is I want my actually header to appear in a header, and whereby it's only 4 columns: employee name, ID, join date and annual salary, instead of overlapping. So what I'm going to do is I just want to remove the blank rows. So I go to home, remove blank rows, and then what I'm going to do is, since the first row has been removed, next step is go to transform and I will transpose. So automatically it will change. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use first row as header. So use first row as header. So I'm going to click it over here. But good thing is, although we do have employee name column, ID column, join date column, salary column, but it's overlapping. We do have extra columns. So this is quite tricky, because I'm going to add another dummy column. So I just will press here, add column, index column. When I add an index column, yes, it shows a sequence, but the purpose of adding this column is because it is a dummy column. So I'm going to press here, right click and unpivot other columns. Just like that. So now we have already unpivot the other columns. So now I'm going to do what? Select these 2 columns, right click and remove columns. So right now we do have this data over here. What I'm going to do next is I actually want to show a sequence. So I'll just go to add column, index column. So this one is actually to show the sequence. And then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go to standard and press divide integer. Divide means it will actually shows us the answers with decimal places. I want divide integer because I actually want to show the answer without decimal places, because integer is a type of number without decimal places. Click it over here. They will ask me what number I want to divide. Well, we have 4 different types of data over here. Employee name, and then we do have the ID number, we have the join date, and we have annual salary. So 4 types of data. So I'm going to put here 4 and I'm going to put here OK. And just like that, this whole purpose is to actually calculate the number, the type of row. So this is basically row number 1, row number 2, row number 3. So that's why we just do this standard divide integer. Then I select this index, I go to transform over here and click standard, and then I click modulo. Click modulo, and I still divided by 4 because we have 4 different types of data. I press OK, and just like that it will appear. Next step is I go to pivot column, and once I go to pivot column, advanced option, instead of count all, I choose don't aggregate and I press OK, and just like that it will actually pivot the column. So right now we have in a proper format. So you can remove this column, and eventually you can rename this as employee name, ID, join date, and also the salary. Now let's go to the last part. So the last part is very exciting because we do have repairing work, we do have the details, we do have the date and client. So what I want is I want the date and client to actually appear in actually 2 separate columns. So first step is remove the null. So I go to home, remove, I click on remove blank. so that the first row has been removed. So you can actually click remove top row, or you can also click remove blank rows. So just say all your column has null, then you can click remove blank rows. But if just say selected columns has data, but you want to remove the top row, you can click remove top row. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to use first row as header, and then I'm going to select the first two columns, right click, unpivot other columns. So just like that, it will unpivot other columns. This column is not necessary, we can remove this. And what I'm going to do here is I'll just use the same step, add column, index. This is to show the sequence, standard, divide integer because I don't want decimal places. So what we want to divide, here we do have two different types of data. So 2, I press here OK, now it's done. Then I select this index column, transform, and then I go to standard, modulo, and I still choose 2 because we have two types of data. Press OK, and then there you go. Now I go to pivot column, and then I want to actually pivot the values column. So I'm going to select the value column and make sure it is don't aggregate. So don't aggregate and press OK, and just like that it's done. So right now what happened is we do have this column over here which has been pivoted, and this column you can remove. So this is the date column, this is the client name. So just like that, we have done our data. So meaning to say we can actually use Power BI to perform data cleaning.